Park Hyun-woo checked his uniform one last time before stepping off the transport shuttle. The small blue circle with white stars on his chest felt heavier than usual today. He had worn the Earth Defense Corps emblem for 5 years, but something about this mission made him nervous. The diplomatic escort to Nexus Prime should have been routine work, but nothing felt routine anymore since humanity joined the galactic community. Kim Dae-ho walked beside him carrying the tactical equipment case. His friend had been quiet during the entire journey from Earth. Lee So-young followed behind them with her communication gear humming softly. The three of them had worked together on dozens of missions, but this felt different. Ambassador Choi Minho waited for them at the shuttle dock, looking tired from the long journey through hyperspace. The Nexus Prime station stretched out before them like a metal city in space. Ships from dozens of different worlds docked at its many ports. Alien beings of all shapes and sizes moved through the corridors. Some walked on 2 legs like humans, while others floated or crawled or moved in ways that hurt to watch. The air. Recycling systems worked hard to handle the mix of different atmospheres that each species needed. Hyun-woo led his team through the security checkpoint. The alien guards scanned their weapons and equipment with devices that looked like crystal, flowers. Everything seemed normal until one of the guards noticed his uniform. The creature had 4 arms and skin like blue metal. Its eyes went wide when it saw the emblem on his chest. It made a sound like wind chimes and stepped back quickly. Other aliens in the checkpoint area began to turn and stare. A tall being with too many joints in its arms pointed at Hyun-woo and whispered to its companion. A group of small furry creatures that reminded him of cats started making excited chirping sounds. Even the station workers stopped what they were doing to look at the humans. Dae-ho moved closer to Hyun-woo and whispered that something was wrong. The tactical officer had good instincts, and right now those instincts were telling him to be ready for trouble. So-young activated her translation device and tried to pick up what the aliens were saying, but most of it came through as confused fragments about guardians and ancient symbols. Ambassador Choi seemed unaware of the growing attention. He was busy reading reports on his datapad about the trade negotiations with the Velthari Confederacy. The ambassador had spent months preparing for these talks and saw them as a chance for humanity to gain important allies in this part of the galaxy. He did not notice how the crowd of aliens continued to grow around them. The station manager arrived to escort them to their quarters. She was a Velthari female with pale green skin and large dark eyes. Her name was difficult for human mouths to pronounce, so she told them to call her manager Yeth. She seemed nervous as she led them through the station corridors. Her hands shook slightly as she operated the lift controls. Their quarters were in the diplomatic section of the station. The rooms were designed to accommodate many different species, so everything looked strange to human eyes. The gravity felt slightly wrong, and the air had a metallic taste. Hyun-woo assigned guard duties to his team and began his security sweep of the area. During his patrol of the maintenance levels, he encountered a young Velthari female working on the environmental systems. She was smaller than most of her species, with silver markings on her arms that seemed to glow in the dim light. Her work clothes were stained with lubricants and her tools looked well used. She seemed focused on her task until she noticed him approaching. When she looked up and saw his uniform, her reaction was immediate and shocking. The wrench fell from her hands with a metallic clang. Her large eyes went even wider, and she dropped to her knees so fast that Hyun-woo thought she might have been injured. She pressed her forehead to the deck plating and began speaking rapidly in her own language. Hyun-woo activated his translation device, but the words came through as fragments about guardians and architects and the return of the Star Shapers. He knelt down beside her and gently touched her shoulder. She looked up at him with something that seemed like worship in her eyes. Her voice was barely a whisper when she spoke in broken galactic standard. She said the Guardians had returned and pointed at the emblem on his chest. She said her people had waited for thousands of years for this moment. She said the sleeping worlds would wake up now that the architects had come back to claim what was theirs. Her words made no sense to Hyun-woo, but the fear and reverence in her voice were very real. He helped her stand and asked for her name. She said it was Kaya Lin, and that she worked in the lower maintenance sections where few people ever came. She had seen the symbols before in the old places her people had found, on dead worlds. The same blue circle with white stars carved into metal that was older than recorded history. Other aliens began to gather in the corridor, drawn by the sounds of their conversation. They whispered among themselves and pointed at Hyunwoo's uniform. Some seemed excited while others appeared frightened. A few made gestures that looked like prayers or blessings. The situation was getting out of control. Quickly, security alarms began to sound throughout the station. Manager Yeth's voice came over the communication system, asking all diplomatic personnel to return to their quarters immediately. Emergency. Lockdown procedures were being implemented due to what she called an unexpected situation in the trade negotiation areas. Hyunwoo escorted Kaya Lin to a safer area and then returned to find his team. Daeho and So Young were already back at their quarters with weapons ready and communication equipment activated. Ambassador Choi looked confused and angry about the interruption to his carefully planned schedule. The news feeds from around the station showed crowds of aliens gathering in the main corridors. Many carried images or carvings that looked similar to the Earth Defense Corps emblem. Some species that had been enemies for generations were standing together and chanting in languages that the translation systems could not identify. Reports came in from other parts of Nexus Prime about similar reactions. Alien pilgrims were arriving on ships from across the sector. Religious leaders from dozens of different faiths were demanding audiences with the human delegation. Trade representatives were abandoning their negotiations to come see the humans for themselves. Manager Yeth arrived at their quarters looking exhausted and overwhelmed. She explained that the situation was beyond anything in her training or experience. The various alien governments were sending urgent messages demanding explanations. Some wanted the humans protected, while others insisted they should be detained for questioning. So Young managed to establish communication with the UES Harmony, still docked at the station. Captain Lim reported that alien ships were arriving in the system faster than traffic control could handle them. The ships came from dozens of different worlds and species, many of which had never been seen in this sector before. The captain also reported strange readings from the station's power systems. The quantum resonance field that provided artificial, gravity and environmental control was fluctuating in patterns that the engineering team had never observed. The fluctuations seemed to be centered around the areas where the human delegation was located. Ambassador Choi demanded a full briefing on what was happening. He had spent his entire career in diplomatic service, but nothing had prepared him for a situation where his mere presence could cause this kind of reaction. The trade negotiations that were supposed to be routine had turned into something that might change the balance of power in the entire galaxy. Hyunwoo thought about Kaya Lin and her words about guardians and architects. He looked down at the simple emblem on his uniform that he had worn for years without giving it much thought. The blue circle with white stars was just the symbol of Earth's defense forces, but to these aliens it meant something much more important and much more dangerous. The communication system activated again with an urgent message from the Velthari High Council. They were sending their most senior diplomats to Nexus Prime immediately. Other governments were doing the same. What had started as simple trade talks was becoming the most important gathering in galactic history. As night cycle began on the station, Hyunwoo stood guard at his post and wondered what tomorrow would bring. Outside their quarters, he could hear the sounds of thousands of aliens who had traveled across the galaxy just to see humans. Some were singing, while others prayed. All of them seemed to believe that something momentous was about to happen. He touched the emblem on his chest and tried to understand how a simple symbol could carry so much power and meaning. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than any of them had imagined. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was at the center of it, whether they understood why or not. The morning cycle brought no relief from the chaos that had engulfed Nexus Prime. Hyunwoo woke to find that 3 more alien fleets had arrived during the night. The station's docking facilities were beyond capacity, and ships waited in long lines for permission to board. Manager Yeth looked like she had not slept at all when she arrived with the daily briefing. Ambassador Choi was reviewing reports from Earth Command when Kaya Lin appeared at their quarters. She had convinced the security guards to let her pass by showing them some kind of maintenance authorization. Her silver markings seemed brighter today, and she carried a small device that hummed with strange energy. She asked to speak with Hyunwoo privately and produced a translator unit that was more advanced than anything the humans had seen. Nam Yun Seo had arrived on the overnight transport from Earth specifically to help with translation problems. The young linguist was excited to work with alien technology that could handle multiple species communication protocols simultaneously. Kaya Lin activated a holographic display that filled the room with images of ancient ruins scattered across dozens of worlds. The structures were massive and clearly built by an advanced civilization. Each site contained the same symbol that appeared on human uniforms. The blue circle with white stars was carved into metal walls that had survived millions of years without showing signs of decay. She explained that her people had discovered these sites centuries ago during their expansion into space. The Velthari had explored more than 50 worlds that contained similar ruins. Every site was dormant and showed no signs of recent activity. Their scientists had studied the structures for generations without learning how to activate them or understanding their purpose. The translator revealed that Velthari legends spoke of the architects who had shaped the galaxy in ancient times. These beings had created the foundation for all life and civilization before disappearing without explanation. The legends said they would return when the galaxy faced its greatest threat, and that their symbol would herald a new age. Other alien species had similar legends according to Kaya Lin. The insectoid hive kin told stories of the first shapers, who had guided evolution on countless worlds. The Crystalline Resonance Collective sang harmonies about the star guardians who had planted the seeds of consciousness throughout space. Each culture had different names, but the stories were remarkably similar. Nam Yun Seo worked with the translation system to verify the historical records. The data confirmed that ruins with human symbols existed on worlds that had been surveyed by multiple species. The sites were always in strategic locations near important resources or travel routes. The technology used in their construction was beyond anything that current galactic civilization could produce. Manager Yeth interrupted with urgent news about the trade negotiations. The Velthari High Counselor had arrived and was demanding an immediate meeting with the human delegation. Other species representatives were making similar demands. The carefully planned economic discussions had been abandoned in favor of questions about humanity's true identity and purpose. Ambassador Choi was struggling to maintain diplomatic protocol while facing questions he could not answer. Earth Command had not prepared him for a situation where aliens would treat humans as returning gods or ancient overlords. His training focused on trade agreements and cultural exchange, not on managing religious fervor and historical mysteries. The situation became more complicated when engineer Oh Young-min reported anomalies in the station's quantum systems. The resonance. Field generators were responding to human neural patterns in ways that violated known physics. The equipment was treating human brain waves as authorization codes for systems that had been built by completely different civilizations. Young-min showed them data readings that made no scientific sense. The station's artificial gravity fluctuated whenever humans moved through certain sections. Environmental controls adjusted automatically to human preferences without being programmed to do so. Even the communication arrays were boosting signals that originated from human equipment while filtering out background noise. Kaya Lin revealed that similar phenomena had been reported on other stations and planets where humans had visited. The ancient technology seemed to recognize them as legitimate users, even though humans had never encountered such systems before. She suggested that the recognition went deeper than simple genetic matching and involved some kind of quantum entanglement that connected humans to the original builders. The implications were staggering if true. It would mean that humanity was somehow descended from or connected to the most advanced civilization the galaxy had ever known. The beings who had built the ruins and planted the seeds of current galactic society might have been human ancestors or might have created humanity. For some specific purpose, Security Chief Bae In-ho arrived with disturbing intelligence from the various alien fleets surrounding the station. Several species were positioning their ships in defensive formations, while others seemed to be preparing for some kind of coordinated action. The peaceful gathering was starting to look more like the prelude to a conflict. The Corvan Empire had sent a battle fleet disguised as a diplomatic mission. Their ships carried enough firepower to destroy the station and everything around it. Intelligence indicated that they viewed humanity as a potential threat that needed to be contained before it could access whatever weapons their ancestors might have left behind. Other species were taking the opposite approach and offering military protection to the humans. The gentle Velthari had called in their entire defensive fleet. The massive Titan-class beings who rarely left their home system had sent representatives in ships that could crush smaller vessels just by moving too close to them. Nam Yun Seo discovered references in the ancient texts to something called the Silent Worlds. These were planets that contained the largest and most complex ruins but showed no signs of life or activity. According to the legends, these worlds would awaken when the architects returned and would reveal the true purpose of the ancient civilization. Kaia offered to guide a joint expedition to the nearest silent world. Her people had been studying the planet for decades without making any progress. The ruins covered entire continents but remained completely inert despite all attempts to activate them. She believed that human presence might be the key to unlocking their secrets. The proposal created immediate controversy among the alien representatives. Some species wanted exclusive access to any discoveries, while others demanded that all findings be shared equally. The possibility that humans might gain access to ancient superweapons or advanced technology terrified civilizations that had spent centuries building their current power structures. Ambassador Choi found himself negotiating not just trade agreements, but the future relationship between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. Every decision could have consequences that would echo for generations. The simple diplomatic mission had become a crossroads moment that would define humanity's place in galactic civilization. Captain Lim contacted them from the UES Harmony with reports of increasing tension throughout the system. More alien fleets were arriving hourly, and the mix of species included some that had been at war with each other for centuries. The presence of humans seemed to be creating temporary truces, but also raising the stakes for any potential conflict. The communication arrays picked up transmissions in languages that the translation systems could not identify. Some appeared to be prayers or ritual chants, while others sounded like military coordinates. The various species were clearly preparing for multiple contingencies, including the possibility that the human presence would trigger some kind of galactic transformation. Dr. Han Soo-jin arrived on an emergency transport from Earth Command, bringing xenoarchaeological expertise and advanced scanning equipment. Her preliminary analysis of the data confirmed that the ruins predated all known galactic civilizations by at least 1 million years. The builders had possessed technology that current science could barely comprehend. The discovery of quantum entanglement patterns in the ruins suggested that they were all connected in some vast network that spanned the entire galaxy. If activated, this network could potentially control or monitor everything that happened in civilized space. The implications for privacy, security, and autonomy were profound. Kaia showed them recordings from failed attempts to activate the Silent World ruins. Her people had tried everything from plasma cutting to quantum resonance bombardment. The ancient structures absorbed or deflected every form of energy they applied. It was as if the ruins were waiting for a specific type of activation signal. The translator revealed fragments of text that referred to a great return and the awakening of the sleepers. The ancient record suggested that the galaxy went through cycles of growth and catastrophe. The architects had built their network to preserve civilization through these dark periods, but at a terrible cost to themselves as the day progressed. It became clear that the situation was spiraling beyond anyone's control. The various alien governments were sending ultimatums demanding answers about human intentions. Religious movements were forming around the belief that humans were destined to lead a new golden age. Dr. Han Soo-jin worked through the night analyzing the data that Kaia had provided about the Silent Worlds. Her xenoarchaeological training had prepared her for many discoveries, but nothing like this. The quantum signatures embedded in the ancient ruins matched human DNA patterns with an accuracy that defied statistical probability. The connection was not coincidental but deliberately engineered. Captain Yoon Tae-won arrived at Nexus Prime aboard the exploration vessel Pioneer with his crew of specialists and additional scanning equipment. His ship had been conducting routine surveys of uninhabited systems when Earth Command redirected him to investigate reports of ancient structures awakening. What he found challenged everything science understood about galactic history. The Pioneer's first officer reported that dormant installations on 17 different worlds had begun showing signs of activity within hours of human ships entering their star systems. The structures were drawing power from unknown sources and generating electromagnetic fields that interfered with normal ship operations. The technology was reacting to human presence across distances that should have been impossible. Meanwhile, the situation at Nexus Prime continued to deteriorate as more alien fleets arrived demanding answers or protection. The station's population had tripled in 2 days, straining life support systems and creating dangerous overcrowding. Manager Yeth was coordinating emergency protocols while trying to prevent conflicts between species that had historical grievances against each other. The Corvan Empire had issued an ultimatum, demanding that humans submit to detention and examination by neutral scientists. Their battle fleet commander claimed that uncontrolled human access to ancient technology posed an existential threat to galactic civilization. Several other militaristic species were supporting the Corvan position and preparing for enforcement. Action Ambassador Choi found himself trapped between impossible demands and conflicting interests. The peaceful trade mission had become a crisis that could trigger the largest war in galactic history. Earth Command was sending reinforcements, but any military escalation might provoke the very conflict they were trying to avoid. Dr. Su Jin presented her preliminary findings to the assembled representatives. The ancient ruins contained genetic templates for thousands of species, including many that currently existed in the galaxy. The builders had not just influenced evolution, but had actively guided it according to some vast design. The implications suggested that current galactic civilization was the result of deliberate intervention rather than natural development. The discovery that human genetic markers were encoded into technology scattered across dozens of star systems confirmed the worst fears of some alien governments. If humans were the inheritors of ancient superweapons or control systems, they could potentially dominate or destroy every other species in the galaxy. The power imbalance would be so extreme that resistance might be futile. Kaya Lin worked with engineer Zhang Qi-Tae to prepare for the expedition to the nearest silent world. The planet designated as Kepler 442c had been studied extensively by Velthari researchers without yielding any secrets. The ruins covered nearly 30% of the continental landmass, but remained completely inert despite decades of investigation. The joint exploration team included representatives from several species, but tensions ran high between those who supported human leadership and those who feared it. Security protocols were established to prevent any single group from gaining exclusive access to discoveries. Every finding would be shared immediately with all participants, regardless of political consequences. Captain Yoon reported disturbing data from the Pioneer's deep space sensors. Ancient installations throughout the sector were showing increased activity levels. The network of ruins seemed to be communicating with each other using quantum entanglement technology that operated faster than light speed. The awakening was not limited to individual sites, but involved coordinated activation across vast distances. The expedition departed for Kepler 442c aboard a mixed fleet of human and alien vessels. The journey through hyperspace took 3 days, during which various species representatives attempted to negotiate exclusive agreements with the humans. The political maneuvering was complicated by the fact that nobody understood what they might be negotiating for. Upon arrival at the Silent World, the expedition teams established base camp near the largest ruin complex. The structures rose from the planetary surface like metallic mountains following geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. The architecture incorporated mathematical principles that challenged conventional understanding of physics and engineering. Dr. Su Jin led the initial survey using advanced scanning equipment, while Kaya Lin provided historical context from previous Velthari investigations. The ruins showed no signs of age or weathering despite being exposed to planetary conditions for millions of years. The materials used in construction were unknown alloys that seemed to regenerate any damage automatically. Engineer Qi-Tae detected massive power systems buried deep beneath the surface, but could not determine their energy source or operating principles. The readings suggested that the installations could draw unlimited power from the quantum vacuum itself. Such technology would revolutionize galactic civilization if it could be understood and replicated. The first activation occurred when Hyun-woo approached the central entrance to the main complex. The ancient doors recognized his presence and opened silently, revealing corridors that stretched beyond the range of portable lighting. Emergency power systems activated throughout the structure, bathing everything in a blue glow that matched the color of the Earth Defense Corps. Emblem Security Chief Bae In-ho established perimeter defenses, while the exploration teams entered the activated sections. The internal architecture was clearly designed for humanoid beings with corridors and chambers sized for human proportions. Control interfaces responded to touch and displayed information in symbols that gradually shifted to recognizable human languages. The central command chamber contained a massive holographic display that showed the positions of thousands of installations throughout the galaxy. Many sites were marked as active while others remained dormant. The pattern of activation corresponded exactly with reports of human presence in various star systems. The network was awakening in response to humanity's expansion into space. Kaya Lin discovered archives containing the complete history of galactic civilization from its earliest beginnings to the present day. The records revealed that organic life in this galaxy faced extinction-level threats approximately every 300,000 years. The pattern was too regular to be natural and suggested some external force that periodically swept through the region. The archives explained that humans were not originally from Earth, but were the descendants of the ancient species that had built the network. The original human civilization had reached a level of technological advancement that allowed them to seed the galaxy with life and guide evolution toward intelligence. They had created the current diversity of species as part of a vast biological experiment. The most shocking revelation was that the ancient humans had not fled the galaxy, but had sacrificed themselves to create a protective barrier against the recurring cosmic threat. They had transformed their consciousness into pure energy and merged with the galactic defense network. Their sacrifice had preserved life for hundreds of thousands of years, but the protection was beginning to fail. The cosmic phenomenon that had driven the ancients to such desperate measures was returning. Deep space sensors were detecting gravitational anomalies and dark matter disturbances at the galaxy's edge. The threat would not arrive for several decades, but its advance effects were already destabilizing star systems in the outer rim regions. Captain Yoon confirmed the sensor readings from his position in orbit. The Pioneer's instruments showed massive energy signatures moving through intergalactic space toward their location. The phenomenon appeared to be a dark matter storm of unprecedented size and power. When it arrived, it would strip away planetary atmospheres and collapse star systems. The defense network that the ancient humans had created required continuous maintenance and periodic upgrades to remain effective. The installations throughout the galaxy were components of a massive shield generator that could deflect the cosmic threat. However, the system had been damaged by sabotage and neglect over the millennia. Some species had deliberately destroyed network nodes out of fear or ignorance, while others had simply failed to maintain facilities they did not understand. The gaps in coverage had grown so large that the shield could no longer provide complete protection. Billions of civilized worlds would be vulnerable when the dark matter storm arrived. The archives revealed that the network could only be fully repaired and operated by beings with the correct genetic codes. The ancient humans had built safeguards into the system to prevent misuse by other species. Only their direct descendants could access the highest levels of control and authorize the massive energy expenditures required for galactic defense. The implications hit the expedition teams like a physical blow. Humanity was not just connected to the ancient civilization, but was literally its continuation. The news of humanity's true origin spread across the galaxy faster than anyone had anticipated. Within hours of the expedition's discoveries at Kepler 442c, every major civilization received detailed reports about the approaching cosmic threat and humanity's connection to the ancient defense network. The reaction was immediate and devastating to galactic stability. Religious movements erupted on hundreds of worlds as species that had worshipped the mythical architects realized that their gods had descendants walking among them. The Velthari Worship Coalition declared that humans were destined to lead the galaxy into a new golden age. Similar groups formed among other species, creating a wave of religious fervor that swept across civilized space. The Fear Alliance, led by the Corvan Empire, took the opposite position and declared humanity to be harbingers of apocalypse. They pointed to the approaching dark matter storm as evidence that human awakening would bring destruction rather than salvation. The Corvan battle fleets moved to intercept human ships throughout their territory, while demanding that other governments join their containment efforts. Communications officer Shin Hyojin worked around the clock to coordinate responses to the flood of urgent transmissions arriving at Nexus Prime. Alien governments were demanding immediate action, while religious leaders sought audiences with human representatives. The communication arrays were overwhelmed by the volume of traffic from across the galaxy. Meanwhile, at the Silent World, the expedition teams made more disturbing discoveries about the ancient defense network. Engineer Ki Tei found evidence of deliberate sabotage at multiple installation sites. Some species had actively worked to damage the network either out of fear of human return or simple ignorance about its purpose. The destruction had weakened the galactic shield beyond its original design limits. Dr. Sujin analyzed the quantum entanglement patterns connecting the various installations and realized the scope of the challenge they faced. Repairing the network would require coordination between sites separated by thousands of light years. The logistics alone were staggering, but the technical requirements seemed almost impossible given current technology levels. The archives revealed that the original humans had spent centuries preparing for their final sacrifice. They had gradually transferred their consciousness into quantum storage matrices while maintaining their biological forms long enough to complete the network construction. The process had been voluntary, but irreversible once begun. Kaya-Lin worked with the translation systems to understand the technical specifications for network operation. The power requirements were enormous, exceeding the total energy output of most star systems. The ancient humans had solved this problem by converting matter directly into energy using principles that current science barely comprehended. Captain Yoon reported increasingly disturbing readings from deep space sensors throughout the sector. The advance effects of the approaching dark matter storm were growing stronger with each passing day. Star systems in the outer rim were reporting gravitational anomalies and unexplained energy fluctuations. The phenomenon was still decades away, but its influence was already being felt. The political situation deteriorated rapidly as news of the cosmic threat reached civilian populations. Panic buying and social unrest erupted on worlds throughout. The galaxy as beings realized that their governments might be powerless to protect them. Some species began massive evacuation efforts, while others demanded immediate military action against humanity. Ambassador Choi found himself at the center of negotiations that could determine the fate of galactic civilization. The various alien governments were split into irreconcilable factions, with some offering unconditional support to humanity, while others threatened total war. Every diplomatic solution seemed to create new problems and deepen existing divisions. The Resonance Collective sent crystalline ambassadors who communicated through harmonic frequencies that bypassed normal translation protocols. Their message was clear despite the unusual delivery method. They offered to share their quantum consciousness technology to help distribute the burden of network operation across multiple species, rather than requiring human sacrifice alone. Other technologically advanced species made similar offers. But the competing proposals created additional complications. Each group wanted guarantees about their future role in galactic governance if humanity accepted their assistance. The crisis was becoming entangled with political ambitions and territorial disputes that had festered for generations. Security Chief In-Ho coordinated defensive preparations as reports arrived of Corvan fleet movements throughout the sector. The Empire had allied with several other militaristic species to form a containment force that outnumbered human ships by more than 10 to 1. Any military confrontation would be brief and decisive in favor of the aliens. The expedition teams at Kepler 442c worked frantically to understand the network modification options that might avoid the need for human sacrifice. The ancient archives contained theoretical frameworks for distributed consciousness integration but no practical implementation guides. The original humans had never attempted such an approach because they lacked willing partners among other species. Dr. Ryu Wu-jin arrived from Earth aboard the research vessel Prometheus with a team of quantum physicists and consciousness transfer specialists. His preliminary analysis of the network architecture suggested that modification might be possible, but would require unprecedented cooperation between species that had never worked together before. The technical challenges were matched by social and political obstacles that seemed equally daunting. The network modification would require volunteers from multiple species to undergo partial consciousness transfer into the quantum matrix. The process would fundamentally change their nature while preserving their individual identities within. A collective framework scientist, Song Hae-young, discovered that the consciousness transfer process was not necessarily permanent if performed correctly. The ancient humans had made their sacrifice irreversible by choice, but the technology could potentially allow volunteers to maintain connections to both biological and quantum states of existence. The possibility of reversible consciousness transfer changed the entire scope of the crisis. Instead of demanding ultimate sacrifice, the network could operate through temporary volunteers who rotated through quantum service periods. The approach would require massive coordination and unprecedented trust between species, but offered a path to survival without genocide. Captain Lim received urgent reports from Earth Command about political developments in human space. The revelation of humanity's cosmic responsibility had split Earth's government into competing factions. Some leaders wanted to embrace the role of galactic protectors, while others feared the consequences of accepting such massive obligations. Admiral Kang Seok-jin led the faction that believed humans should simply take control of the galaxy as their birthright. His supporters argued that other species had proven themselves incapable of responsible galactic stewardship, and that human leadership was both inevitable and necessary for survival. Ambassador Moon Ji-hai advocated for the opposite approach and pushed for true galactic democracy, where all species shared responsibility for collective defense. Her faction believed that accepting the burden of protection did not require accepting the role of rulers. The debate was tearing apart Earth's political establishment. The approaching deadline forced difficult decisions at every level of government and society. The dark matter storm would not wait for political consensus or perfect solutions. Each day of delay increased the risk that the network could not be repaired in time to provide adequate protection. Engineer Kai Tae made a breakthrough in understanding the network's power distribution system. The installations could be modified to draw energy from multiple star systems simultaneously, rather than requiring local power generation. The approach would spread the burden across willing civilizations and reduce the risk of catastrophic failure. The discovery offered hope for a solution that preserved both human autonomy and galactic survival. However, implementing the modifications would require access to installations throughout Corvin space and other hostile territories. The technical solution was meaningless, without political agreements that seemed impossible to achieve, as the expedition teams prepared to return to Nexus. Prime with their findings, the full scope of the challenge became clear. They had discovered the means to save the galaxy, but lacked the time and political unity necessary to implement the solution. The approaching storm would test not just their technology, but their ability to overcome centuries of mistrust and competition. Weight of responsibility pressed down on every human in the expedition as they realized that their species held the key to universal survival. The choices they made in the coming days would determine whether the galaxy entered a new age of cooperation or descended into chaos and extinction. The ancient humans had faced a similar choice millions of years ago and had chosen sacrifice over domination. Their descendants now faced the same fundamental question about the nature of power and responsibility. The galaxy waited to see whether modern humanity would prove worthy of their inheritance or would repeat the failures that had led to the current crisis. The return journey to Nexus Prime took place under the shadow of an ultimatum from the Corvin Empire. Admiral Kang's faction had gained political support on Earth and was preparing to claim humanity's inheritance through force if necessary. The galaxy stood on the brink of a war that would make the approaching cosmic storm seem insignificant by comparison. Dr. Ryu Woo-jin spent the entire hyperspace journey working with alien scientists to refine the network modification protocols. The breakthrough came when scientist Song Hae-young discovered that the consciousness transfer process could be enhanced using resonance collective harmonic technology combined with Velthari biological interfaces. The hybrid approach would allow volunteers from any species to interface safely with the quantum matrix. The technical solution required unprecedented cooperation between civilizations that had been enemies for generations. The Hivekin offered their collective processing capabilities, while the Titan-class beings provided massive computational resources. Even former adversaries began contributing expertise as the reality of universal extinction overcame political differences. Captain Yoon transmitted the expedition findings to Earth Command and every major alien government simultaneously to prevent any single faction from suppressing the information. The message included complete technical specifications for network modification and detailed analysis of the approaching threat timeline. The data left no room for denial or political maneuvering. Ambassador Moon rallied support for the Cooperative approach by organizing video conferences between Earth's leadership and moderate alien governments. Her diplomatic skills proved crucial in building coalitions that crossed traditional alliance boundaries. The shared threat created opportunities for partnerships that had seemed impossible just days earlier. Meanwhile, Admiral Kong moved his fleet toward the silent world, claiming that humanity needed to secure the network installations before hostile aliens could sabotage them further. His actions threatened to trigger the very conflict that the cooperative factions were trying to avoid. The Admiral believed that strength and determination were humanity's greatest assets. The Corvan Empire responded to Kang's fleet movements by activating their own battle groups and demanding that neutral species choose sides in the coming confrontation. Several governments that had remained uncommitted were forced into defensive alliances that hardened the divisions throughout the galaxy. Kaya Lin proved to be an unexpected bridge between the competing factions when she volunteered to become the first non-human to undergo the experimental consciousness transfer process. Her willingness to risk her life for the greater good inspired similar commitments from representatives of dozens of other species. The volunteer program grew rapidly as word spread about the possibility of saving the galaxy without requiring human sacrifice. Religious leaders who had preached about the return of the architects now called for faithful service in the great work of preservation. Scientists and engineers from across the galaxy offered their expertise for the modification project. Engineer Kiti established the first successful interspecies consciousness link between himself and Kaya Lin using the modified transfer protocols. The connection allowed them to interface directly with the network control systems while maintaining their individual identities. The breakthrough proved that the cooperative approach could work if implemented on a massive scale. The success of the experimental link shifted political momentum toward the cooperative solution, but also intensified opposition from factions that feared losing control over their populations. The Corvan Empire declared the consciousness transfer technology to be a form of mental enslavement and threatened to destroy any installation that attempted to implement it. Commander An Dong-hyun arrived at Nexus Prime with a fleet of human ships carrying volunteers and technical equipment for the network modification project. His crews included engineers, scientists, and military personnel who had chosen to risk everything for the chance to save galactic civilization without resorting to conquest or domination. The political situation reached a crisis point when Admiral Kang's forces encountered Corvan patrol ships near the Silent World installation. Both sides claimed they were protecting the galaxy from the other's misguided policies, but everyone understood that any conflict would doom the modification project and guarantee universal extinction. Ambassador Choi worked desperately to arrange a ceasefire while the technical teams raced to complete their preparations. The network modification required precise timing and coordination between installations across dozens of star systems. Any military interference would disrupt the delicate quantum entanglement patterns and could damage the network beyond repair. Dr. Su-jin discovered that the ancient archives contained emergency protocols that could override political disputes and force cooperation between hostile factions. The original humans had anticipated that their descendants might face similar challenges and had built safeguards into the network itself. The override protocols required authorization from volunteers representing every major species in the galaxy. The system would not activate unless beings from at least 50 different civilizations agreed to participate in the consciousness transfer process. The requirement ensured that no single group could control the network while encouraging maximum cooperation. Kaya Lin and Kite worked together to recruit volunteers from species that had never cooperated before. Their successful consciousness link served as proof that the process was safe and beneficial rather than dangerous or exploitative. The volunteer ranks swelled as fear of extinction overcame political hesitations. The moment of truth arrived when long-range sensors detected the first direct effects of the approaching dark matter storm. Several star systems in the outer rim reported gravitational distortions that were stripping away planetary atmospheres. The phenomenon was accelerating and would reach populated regions within months rather than decades, Captain Lim coordinated. The final preparations as thousands of volunteers from hundreds of species gathered at network installations throughout the galaxy. The consciousness transfer process would create a temporary collective mind capable of operating the defense systems while preserving individual identities and allowing eventual return to biological existence. The activation sequence began with volunteers entering quantum interface chambers at precisely synchronized moments across dozens of worlds. The process created a vast network of linked consciousness that spanned the galaxy while maintaining connections to the biological realm. The hybrid collective possessed capabilities that exceeded either purely biological or purely artificial. Intelligence Admiral Kang's forces stood down when they received direct communications from human volunteers who had joined the collective consciousness. The shared experience of quantum awareness transcended political differences and demonstrated that cooperation enhanced rather than diminished individual identity. The Corvan Empire withdrew their opposition when their own volunteers reported that the consciousness transfer process strengthened rather than weakened their connection to their species' heritage. The collective mind preserved cultural diversity while enabling unprecedented coordination and understanding between different forms of life. As the dark matter storm reached the galaxy's outer regions, the modified defense network activated with power drawn from willing civilizations across hundreds of star systems. Instead of creating a simple barrier, the network transformed the cosmic phenomenon into pure energy that revitalized dying systems and created new possibilities for life. The transformation process continued for days as the storm's destructive force was converted into creative potential. New worlds formed in previously empty regions, while dead systems returned to life with enhanced capabilities. The galaxy did not just survive the cosmic threat, but evolved beyond its previous limitations. The collective consciousness gradually dissolved as volunteers returned to their biological existence, carrying enhanced understanding and permanent connections to beings from other species. The network remained active, but under distributed control that prevented any single group from dominating galactic affairs. Yun Wu found Kaya Lin at the memorial established for the ancient humans who had made the original sacrifice. She no longer knelt before his uniform emblem, but stood beside him as an equal partner in the new galactic community. Both of their species had been forever changed by the experience of voluntary cooperation. The galaxy had indeed changed, but through unity rather than conquest. The approaching cosmic threat had created opportunities for partnerships that transcended traditional boundaries of species politics and economics. The shared experience of near extinction had revealed the fundamental connections between all forms of conscious life. Earth's government established new diplomatic protocols that recognized the enhanced relationships formed through consciousness sharing. Ambassador Moon became the first human representative to the Galactic Cooperative Council, where decisions were made through consensus rather than domination. The network installations remained active as centers for continued cooperation and mutual understanding. The technology that had been created for defense became the foundation for unprecedented scientific and cultural exchange.